Welcome to What the Future. We have a very special episode today. I am teleoperating a humanoid robot for the very first time at Foundation Future Industries. We've got a lot of really interesting stuff coming up in this episode. Stay tuned.
In the increasingly crowded field of humanoid robotics, one of the things that makes Foundation and its Phantom robot stand out is the company's embrace of the defense industry, including perhaps someday even weaponizing this technology. With a lot of questions to ask, we visited Foundation in San Francisco to get a hands-on demo, a chance to teleoperate the robot ourselves, and an interview with the company's founder, who envisions this robot going everywhere from the battlefield to Mars, one step at a time.
I got it.
It's common for humanoid robots to have cameras on their head, and Phantoms go all the way around. Some robots, like the Unitree G1, also include a LiDAR vision system, which bounces lasers off the environment to measure depth and distance. But Pathak told me his belief is that sometimes Mo sensors can mean Mo problems. For example, if the LiDAR data conflicts with the camera data, how's the robot supposed to determine what's what?
There are two things we want to reduce: number of sensors and number of wires.
Future iterations of Phantom will have the wires tucked away, along with other upgrades.
You'll notice the Phantom has some gloves on. Underneath these gloves is something like this. This, however, is not the final hand design. They're working on something with even more capabilities, which we got to see over there.
When it comes to creating the perfect humanoid robot hands, it turns out human evolution did a pretty good job.
I can tell you personally, I've done gripper development before. And what you run into is that, oh, well, we want to do this use case and that use case and this other use case. And suddenly you realize it just converges on a human hand.
This tendon-inspired hand design allows for finer control, a greater variety of movements, and is less bulky, meaning the robot will be able to grab more things people do in the ways people do. Speaking of hands, Phantom is learning to throw hands in anticipation of a planned USA vs. China boxing match. China has already hosted numerous robot kickboxing competitions and sporting events, which we've covered on What the Future. Now it seems the competition is going global.
Twice the overall torque throughput than any other robot on the market for its size. So with hips and everything, it would be deadly.
Be deadly?
Yeah.
After taking some punches, it was time for me to put on a VR headset and actually start controlling the robot myself using teleoperation. While I have controlled robots via remote control before, this was my first time using a VR headset. After calibrating the system, I could see tracking dots on my hands and fingers. A double tap of the fingers on one side engages teleoperation, and a double tap on the other side disengages it. You'll notice the robot moving slower than me due to some safety controls slowing it down. A couple times the tracking of my hands got a little bit messed up, where my left hand was controlling the robot's right hand and vice versa, and we had to stop and recalibrate. I've heard other companies talk about how teleoperation can be used to gather data on the right way to perform a specific task. For example, if you teleoperate the robot doing the dishes, it will have data on how to do the dishes that it can then use to inform efforts to ultimately do that task autonomously. However, teleoperation can also be an important means of control in and of itself.
You know I had to do it.
Yeah, you had to.
There are some use cases where you always want a human in the loop. So defense is a really good example of this. As you move from robots doing back office work, which is inspection, maintenance, repair, and defense, to actually weaponized active battlefield work, you always want to make sure there's a human in the loop. We have that for drones. We want that for humanoids. So really good low latency teleoperation is very helpful in a scenario like this. It's also very helpful when some remote operator needs to intervene, like the model ended up not doing what it was expected to do, and a human has to intervene and take over. Very similar to the Waymo cars.
Right now, Foundation is working with the Department of Defense on a variety of contracts mainly focused on logistics work, but Pathak says the potential he sees goes far beyond that.
We believe the future of warfare is robots go in, they walk, how they walk, they decide. They look, they identify, how they do it, they decide. After they identify, a human does a higher order of thinking if that's the right target, the right identification, the right course of action. A lot of the conversations have been around first body in, which does not require as much weaponization, but then also clearing buildings and for instance, there are a lot of landmines now in areas of Ukraine. You don't probably want humans going and discovering it. Also does not require weaponization. But then there are use cases, which is first line of defense, would require arming them with guns. So pretty much all of those things are on the table.
While the battlefield in Mars may be Pathak's ultimate goals for Phantom, there are still a lot of steps in between.
So this is its first time walking with this like new training policy?
Yeah.
Wow, sick.
It could very well fall because their first debut of this policy. I got it. So the team's constantly upgrading and improving the policy, and we're rolling out pretty much as more improvements come in. But it's become increasingly more robust, and now we want to make it walk more naturally that humans do as well.
We've covered the increasing agility of humanoid robots on What the Future for several years, notably Atlas from Boston Dynamics and the G1 from Unitree. Both of these companies are several years older than Foundation, which was founded in 2024.
Good catch. I think almost all labor jobs would be done by robots. It's more so a function of at what time scale. We think majority of them need to be done by robots in next 20 to 30 years in context of factories, warehouses.
This is a common prediction amongst humanoid robot developers, that at some point in the future there will not be enough workers to keep production humming. At the same time, there are also concerns about automation making jobs more scarce. A jobs report from last month shows that there are more people out of work now than there are available jobs for the first time since 2021.
I'm quite optimistic that most likely what's going to happen is this is going to make the markets bigger for goods and services that today have a smaller market and make it more accessible to people, which will just increase the amount of labor force you really need to be able to do the jobs. The second scenario is that doesn't happen. That is probably the most concerning outcome, which I think starts taking shape in some kind of universal basic income. That's better than the alternative of 51% unemployment, but I think still slightly dangerous, because if the government controls your food, your health, your home, your transport, everything, I think it's too much power centralized in one body. Almost every single mutiny has been low employment, bad health services, kind of like plague, things like that. I do think there is a reset mechanism already built in, and historically humans have hit that reset button whenever it's needed. But I really hope it doesn't come down to that.
What do you think of Phantom? Let us know down in the comments, and subscribe for everything that makes you say, what the future. Goodbye.